Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of Mr. Mum's World Speaks, where we are home to food, family, friends, fun, and fur. Four-legged, two-legged, we don't care any order, we don't give a rat's butt. My guest today is John Chwyl, the fashion guy from Edmonton. You may know him and have seen him on TV and as well at West Edmonton Mall for many, many years. Welcome, John. Thank you for joining me.
It's great to see you again. And boy, can I see you today.
You like my shirt, my coat of many colors?
It is. It's very bold.
Yes. Well, I'm a bold person, which brings me to our topic today. Listen,
Okay.
I'm 49 and holding, and right. So I'm wondering what are, or if any, are fashion faux pas for people over 50, like men over 50. Listen, is anything go?
I'm going to say yes, but then I'm going to qualify that by saying that it's really, really important that you take a few things into consideration when you're considering your fashion and your trends. One is that you look for clothes that fit you. So one of the things that we do as we get older is that we become very sentimentally attached to the things that we own. And a problem with that is that you have these things that you've worn over the years that are very special to you, and they make you feel very comfortable, and you think you look really great in them, but they're either no longer the right size, or they're very out of fashion, or they just look like they should be thrown away. So those are the things, listen, I'm all about being bold and being independent and finding your own identity with fashion. But where I draw my line is where people wear clothes that just no longer fit. One of the problems that we have is that we all think that we're still 20. And because of that, we still have that 20-year-old body, which has those 20-year-old clothes that goes along with it. And as we get older, things change in our lives, and we don't make those adjustments with our clothing. So for me, the biggest faux pas is fit. I don't care if you wear your socks with your sandals. If that's what you want on your feet, that's cool. I don't care if you mix your plaids with your prints. I don't care if your colors are vibrant or bold, if that's where you are. But if everything looks like it no longer fits you, I think that's probably where I would say my biggest faux pas is, and I would draw the line.
So I'm glad you brought up the socks and sandal thing, because the Biebs has brought it back. And it is one of my biggest pet peeves in life. If Daryl come anywhere near me with socks and sandals, it would be a divorce. So, is that acceptable even for people of my age now?
So here's what I would say is a general rule is if it was a trend once for you and it's come around a second time, then chances are you probably shouldn't be wearing it the second time trend, because now it looks older on you, right? It's like mini skirts are very cool and in fashion for some people, but most of us at 50 and over most women could never wear a mini skirt, right? So, some can, some can't, but I mean, I think my point is that if it was a trend or a fashion statement when you were younger, to redo it again just amplifies the fact that you're older. So yeah, no, I'm not a huge fan of, but honestly, at home, in your own place, who cares? Do whatever you want. But when you're walking out on the street or you're going to a store, maybe you should care about those things.
True. I remember years ago, first of all, you and I met because you in the day were a stylist, a hairstylist, and you did the hair of my very, very picky husband. And God love him when he had hair. The reality though is I remember, right? Remember you telling me one thing when you did my hair. And I had a cowlick here. And it was the start of receding hairline. And I remember this so distinctly, which I've tried to carry through forever. You said, never fight what's going on naturally. Never try to cover it up. Always go with what's natural.
No.
And does that still hold true?
I think. Oh, 100%. First, I hope I didn't traumatize you for your life, but thankfully, I'm glad that it was a lesson you used positively. And also, one point just before I make my point is that Daryl didn't have a lot of hair back then either, so it didn't take long before it was gone for that poor man. And Lord, please give a hug for me. So, what were we talking about? I forgot. I got sidetracked by reminiscing and going down memory lane, and I was like in that headspace, and I went, "Oh shit, what are we talking about? Oh shoot, what are
we were talking whether you should fight the organicness of what's going on with your body."
Oh no, and here's the thing. Here's a point that I try to make as well too. In addition to what I said to you, is that one of the things that we're all in denial of is that we don't accept our body and our shape for what it is. And so we're in a little bit of denial. Like, I truly believe that I have a 32-inch waist. I've had it my whole entire life. I still have it, although it's not even accurate or true. So when I try to squeeze myself into things that don't fit me, then all of a sudden I realize that maybe I'm not the size that I think I am. So here's what I tell people all the time. The size of the garment is on the inside of the garment. It's not on the outside. Right. And the only way that someone is going to know that you are not the size that you think you are is when you try to wear something that is too small for you and you spill out all over the outside of it. You would be far better served if you buy the proper size and everything fits well. No one is going to notice that you're not a 32 anymore. If you're wearing a 36 and that's what fits you is a 36. But if you put a 32 on and everything spills out, then they think, "My, you're much larger than I thought you were." So that's kind of where you have to sort of draw the line. The size is on the inside. Nobody's going to know what the size is unless you tell them.
Right. And the reality for me, okay, so because if you buy clothes, I buy clothes from everywhere. And I'm a triple extra large in some places. And then a normal, I'm a medium in some places. Right. So again, it's on the inside. I guess what we see now is, what I see as a consumer is the trend where everything, again, mostly on the younger people, is more form-fitting. Yeah. So when I go and buy a suit and the guy is now trying to make it form-fitting for me, should I follow his instructions, or is he just going with what the trend is?
No, he's going with what the trend is. But then also, I think what we've noticed over the years that's beneficial for those of us that are a little bit older is that there are styles and trends that are as vast and diverse as there are people in the world. So just because trends tell you that a suit needs to be sort of that European cut that's very structured and very tailored and very skinny, doesn't mean that's what you have to buy to be in style, because you can go to the next level, which is a little bit looser fit for you. And you're going to feel more comfortable for it, and it's going to fit better, and it's going to look good on you. If you have the body that matches that sort of very thin build, that works great for you. But you do have to make an adjustment for your body shape and your type. And there are lots of styles and choices out there for that. So if the salesperson is saying, "I need you to have this size and we're going to make that work for you," then you need to find a new salesperson, because that's not right. It doesn't work.
Right. What about the whole kind of trend, if you will, that we are now uber casual? with this whole COVID thing that's went on, we've become this stay at home. Is it all right to do, my office from my gray sweats and my t-shirt, that kind of thing. Are we heading down to a path where the trend will not be to dress up and look, like a 10?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I think what I noticed from a fashion perspective years ago, and it probably started maybe just as I was entering my public life as the fashion guy. I was still doing consultations for global TV, and we were talking about styles and trends. And as I was looking and researching, what I was finding is that a lot of the trends that I was seeing were very casual. And I think that influence came really from sort of the tech sector. It's when those big companies started opening up and saying, it's okay if you come to work in a t-shirt and a set of jeans. And then that kind of evolved and sort of moved over into the professional side of everything else. And so we saw that happening pre-COVID. And I think as a result of COVID and the fact that it's gone on as long as it has, I mean, it's what, we're getting into almost 9 months now of people living. You're going to start to feel people just settling in on the idea that casual is how I go to work now. And even if I'm moving from home to work, people used to put on a pair of pants and a shirt to go to the store. And now you wear your t-shirt and your schlumpy stuff to go to the store. I see it all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I think I get that as a trend, and I get that as something that people are doing, and I accept that that's what's happening right now. But I always say, when you sort of adjust your fashion and your clothing and you dress it up just a tiny bit, you feel different about yourself. So I don't know. I think we'll see what happens. I think casual is probably here for a very, very long time. And it might even be here to stay.
And I think people of, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think people of our generation, we looked forward to dressing up. It meant we were doing something special. It meant that we were, you know what I mean? Now, I'm not so sure that the younger generation is doing that. They, what do they have to look forward to that's special that they can't go in their pajamas?
Yeah, I mean, I think their priorities are different in their lives. I think, one of the things that I have to be very cautious about when, being an older person talking about fashion is sort of talk about the good old days and the way that it was. I mean, I have certainly learned over my many, many decades in the profession is that trends change, things are different. There's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly acceptable and it's fine. So if you're an over 50 person and you feel very comfortable dressing casual as you head out, that's great. You're very on trend. If you feel like you want to dress up a tiny bit, that's also okay. And there's nothing wrong with that as well. So, I mean, I think, to say it should be one way or the other is kind of what I've always opposed in the fashion world. It should never be one way or the other. It can be many, many different ways. Right.
You mentioned that you had appeared on obviously Global and many others. Give us a little bit of your history. Again, I mentioned in the opening that you were, I think, the fashion director at West Edmonton Mall. We're on Global. What other things have you done, and where can we find you if we were looking for you? And how did John?
Well, oh, sorry, I missed that.
Where did John, the fashion guy, come in? Like, where did that term come from?
So I'll make this very long story very short. So what happened about 25 years ago is that I had agreed to model in a fashion show. It was called Bridal Fantasy, and it was the largest bridal show in Western Canada, and it's still going today. During that fashion show, the person who was choreographing that fashion show had a major meltdown because the show wasn't going really well. And I remember her calling us names and all kinds of stuff. And I thought to myself, well, this is really rude. Why would you do that to us? We're just, people out here doing fashion. So I went back to my dresser and I said, this is wrong. I don't need to do this. I could do her job, no problem at all. And the person said to me, really, would you be interested? And I said, sure. So Unbeknownst to me, she was very much had the ear of the producer of the show. And she said to him, I have this guy who wants to produce fashion shows. I think you should talk to him. He talked to me. And he said, would you do it? And he said, how much? And I said, I would do it for this much. And he said, well, I've never paid anyone that much before. And then I thought, well, yeah, but you've never had a fashion show from John. And the funny part about that is I've never produced a fashion show by that point. I've been in many, but I'd never produced. So I was doing fashion shows, and West Edmonton Mall heard about fashion shows that this guy was doing. And so they said, we need to have him. So they hired me to do a fashion show. And 20 years later, I was still doing fashion shows for them. But one of the things that happened early on in that career was that Lorraine Mansbridge was doing Global Morning at the time. Do you remember Lorraine?
I do, yeah.
From your days here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she used to call me all the time and say, John, let's talk about fashion. And I liked the idea. I thought that was really fun. I would do that for her. So I came in and we started talking about fashion. And then it became a regular thing. And it was like she was always calling me to do this every seasonal trend. And I thought, wow, this is a lot of effort from me. Maybe I should get paid for this. And so we started this little, I went to a Edmonton and I said at the time, let's do a fashion update segment on a regular basis. And we could just talk about people. And they hired me to do that. And someone said, it kind of just evolved. It was very public. The spot aired 15 times a week for many, many times. And every time I would walk by people, they'd go, oh my God, you're that fashion guy. And I was sitting in a bar drinking with a public relations guy. And he said, have you branded that yet? And I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, fashion guy. And I said, never thought about it. And he goes, you should be the fashion guy. So I did. I became the fashion guy many, many years ago. And that was just kind of how it happened. I created the job. It didn't exist. I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to do it, and I did it for a lot of years. So I talked about fashion on Global for many, many years. It was a regular weekly feature, and we talked about that. I produced fashion shows. I did consultations. I did a lot of makeovers. I do a lot of critiquing. I do a lot of stuff like that. I styled for a lot of photo shoots. I put together tons and tons of marketing pictures and posters and brochures and a whole lot of stuff during my career. So been doing it for a long time, touched a lot of people.
Right. And so do you, figuratively, of course, and do you still work? Because I know you had retired, or was it just from a certain?
Yeah, well, no, at a very early in my life, I was grateful and fortunate enough. We made a decision in our house that we were going to retire. My partner, Tim, and I, he retired from being a registered nurse, and I retired at the same time. So 6 years ago, we both retired from our full-time jobs. I kept 2 contracts when I retired. One of them was to continue to produce Bridal Fantasy. I wanted to do that until my 25th year, which was 2 years ago. I did that. And now the only thing that I have left is that I used to do in-person consultations with Global Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatoon, and Regina for the on-air personalities and the reporters. But now with COVID, we do things via Zoom or whatever else. But even less now because those kinds of things are just not a priority for people right now. So, yeah. So I'm really enjoying retirement. It's great. At 61, I'm having a blast.
Okay, so here's what I know. I know that you guys have just completed on your farm a new gym workout room. What else is new and
yes. So the next thing is a greenhouse that's coming, but the gym was really kind of an awesome experience. We have 160 acres of land at our place here. So we have trees and all kinds of wonderful things out here. In those trees, we unfortunately had a pine beetle infestation that came in. And so the pine trees needed to be cut down and sort of something done with them. So we hired a friend of ours to come over, and they logged the trees for us and turned it into all this timber. And we had like almost 10,000 board feet of wood sitting here. And we thought, what are we going to do with it? And then COVID happened and we're like, well, what are we going to do with ourselves now? So we looked at all that wood and we looked at all the time that we had and we thought, why don't we build a gym? Because at this point, all our gym equipment is sitting in our garage, which is very dark and very gloomy. And so we said, we should build a building for that. So what turned into be a really cool idea actually turned out to be a really cool idea, because we have this really amazing structure now that we build with all of our own wood. The only thing that didn't belong to us are the windows and the plywood that we use for that. Otherwise, everything else came from the land. And it's really super cool. So we'll continue to do all that stuff. I'll continue to sort of talk about fashion. I do private consultations with people occasionally. I don't do as many now because I kind of enjoy sitting in the morning, having my coffee, checking on politics and then heading to the gym for a workout, and then having fika, which is a Swedish tradition of drinking coffee and having a break in the afternoon, and then go out and do a little bit more futzing around the land, and then calling it a day and starting over again with the same thing tomorrow. So it's kind of fun.
It is fun. So tell people a little bit about your land, because first of all, me personally knowing you would have never guessed that you were going to become a bushman. And your husband, yes, he's, all big and rough and tumbly and butch and good looking and all those kinds of things. And so tell me about your land, because you've built your house as well, or did a lot of that, correct?
That's right. Yeah, no, that's true. We did. In fact, we purchased our land about 30 years ago with another couple, and for 1 year we kept the land, and then they decided to move to BC, so we bought them out and we kept the land, and it was a sanctuary. It was a place for us to go to get away from the crazy world of West Edmonton Mall and the fashion guy, and I never had to be the fashion guy here, so it was a great sanctuary. Funny story. One time we were out here and we were roughing it. As you said, no one thought that I would ever do that, including my mom, who thought that I would be living in a penthouse in Edmonton with people, helping do all my work for me so I could sit around. So it was like weird that we were out here. But we were out here and we were doing all kinds of stuff, and we were clearing land and we were really roughing it. It was very rustic and I was very schlumpy. I was definitely not the fashion guy. And I remember driving home one day back to the city. We're about an hour away from Edmonton at the time. And so, we still are an hour away from Edmonton. So I drove there, and on the way was this organic vegetable stand that I wanted to stop at. So I stopped at this organic vegetable stand and I walked out and I went to go buy the vegetables. And as I drove up, these two kids came out of the house and they literally stopped in their tracks. And they just looked at me like, oh my God, this guy's going to kill us. He's a mountain man. He's out here. We're all by ourselves. He's going to kill us. Right. So eventually, we bought the vegetables. I headed to the city. But they were so magnificent that the next weekend, when I came back from the city to out here at the land, I thought I'll stop there again and pick up vegetables that we can use at the land that weekend. So I pull in, and I had just driven from work. I was, being the fashion guy at West Edmonton Mall at the time. And I pull into this organic vegetable stand. And as I pull up, the lady from the house comes out and she looks at me and she stands there and she goes, oh my God, it's you. And I went, okay. Cause I never, whatever. She says, oh my God, you're that fashion guy. And I went, oh yeah. And she goes, you were here last week. And I said, yes, I was. And she goes, my kids saw you. They phoned me right away. They said, you look very different in real life though. So,
right.
It was a great place to not have to be the fashion guy. And so so about 12 years ago, we built our house here. We hired an architect from Saskatchewan or Manitoba. I can't remember where it was from. And they did the plans for us. And so we hired a builder and they built the house to the frame and closed it in. And then Tim and I did the whole inside of the house. And we used at that time the pine that we had logged tongue and grooved for our flooring, and we did that. And so we drywalled and we insulated and we did everything. We didn't do the trim, but we did the rest of it. And it's a wonderful place to just hang out. it's great. So we've always sort of dabbled in building, which is weird because there's an article in Avenue magazine. Edmonton did it. It's called Farmer John. And the premise of that article at the time was they were talking to the fashion guy who was really a farmer, and how interesting, people didn't realize that this fashion guy was really the farmer guy. So it's on Avenue. Edmonton has it. It's called Farmer John. And it'll show you my land. It'll show you some of the things that we built. I built a dining room table and some of the other stuff that we did. So it was kind of a fun article. Yeah, it was an interesting interview.
So part of the, Mr. Mom's World Speaks, we get to talk to so many people and so many different varied people. But one of the themes that I always love to promote is longevity in the LGBTQ community. And you and Tim have been married for, or partnered for a bazillion years. How many?
Yeah. For 38 years this past August.
Crazy. So I'm sure you're very cognizant of the fact that we set the example, and that there are teens and youth that are going to watch this and see you as a definite example of what we can, as the gay community, now be. And Daryl and I have strived, if you will, to kind of be that role model as well. So I'm very appreciative of the fact that we're at a place where we can talk about that. Tell me, because I know Tim as a great guy, like I know you as a great guy, because we've been friends for years. But tell me what that means to be married 38 years in this world today, and tell me what you love most about Tim.
Oh, cool. So I'll start with the first part of that. 38 years ago, the world was completely different than it is now. Right. To be openly gay was just really kind of unheard of. I mean, it still was, it was still a very new thing. And so it was very challenging and very difficult for people to do that. And especially at your work and wherever you were. I don't know if I've ever really defined myself as a gay person. I think I've always defined myself as a person who just happens to be gay. Right. I don't think I owe anyone an explanation of who I am. I don't ask my friends if they're straight. And so I don't need to tell people that I'm gay. So that was kind of how I always believed about things. And so my whole life, all I've ever done is just be who I am. I don't deny who I am. I don't sort of stand on the rooftop and shout who I am. I just am who I am. And so I met Tim 38 years ago. He was working on the rigs at the time. And he came into Mr. Sound, which is where I was doing a part-time job. And he was looking for a record for a Broadway show that he had just seen. And at that same time, I also was a huge fan of this Broadway musical called Dreamgirls that he was looking for this album for. So we connected at that level. So he came in to look for the album. I knew what he was talking about. We talked about the album. I was super excited. And I thought, wow, this guy's really hot. And but he's not gay because he works on the rigs. Right. And so he also was very interested in disco music. At the time, it was disco or dance music. And I said, I'm working at this club downtown. If you wanted to come to this club, I could get you in and you could listen to the music. And if there's something you like, I could talk to the DJ who happened to be your husband, Daryl. And I would say to him, I can get you the album. So I was working that night. Tim agreed to come down. Daryl was at the door at the time taking memberships. And Daryl said, yelled at the top of his lungs, John, he's here. And poor Tim, who was very shocked and not really out at that time, walked in just dripping with sweat. And so, 38 years later, we're still together. Now it's 2020 and the world is significantly different. I mean, I don't think, I think being gay is just such a a non-issue for so many people that we know and that we meet. There are some people who are stuck in a time warp who it's still an issue, but I don't really care about those people. But, you know, for everyone in my life, everyone in his life, everyone in our lives, they don't care. They don't care about this. What they care about is, are these two people who love each other, who care about each other, are good and are kind. That's all they care about. So in 2020, for young people, to be able to look at someone who has a relationship that's 38 years, I'm not sure that's such a huge deal for them anymore because it's so normal for them, but they just don't know old people who are gay. And so I think our job and our responsibility is to say, you know, don't take any of this for granted.
Right.
You know, 38 years ago is a different world, and boy, have we come a long ways in 38 years. And you should just be, you should just be grateful that this is the kind of world that you live in now. Embrace it and be as strong and as powerful and as bold and as out there as you want to be, and whatever makes you comfortable. As far as what do I love about Tim, he's like my rock. He's also the kind of person who he is in some ways the opposite of me. He doesn't stress about every little thing like I do. So he balances me off there. So that's kind of awesome to have someone who's just snap out of it. It's not that big a deal. Move on from there. Enormously supportive of everything that I've done. A great companion and the very best friend in the whole entire world for me.
Awesome. I was going to quickly interrupt you and say, you have nieces and nephews, and I'm wondering, as awesome it is that they see you as it doesn't matter. I'm wondering, have you heard from them or potentially heard from them that there are still struggles for them or people their age? Or that's something that No, I don't think it's I think honestly, depending on the people who are around you, that's going to certainly determine the kind of experience that you have with your openness. And can you be the person that you are? So, I mean, if you have a lot of people around you who love you and who care for you and don't really give a crap what it is that you do, other than you're being a good person and you're kind and you're giving and whatever else, that's really all that matters for them. I think that where we have problems, or where people have problems, are people who just live in a world that doesn't exist anymore for them. You know, they're so 1950s that these people around them who just think, you know, you need to define yourself by male or female, and that's it. There are no ifs, ands, or buts, or nothing in between there, and that's just ludicrous. And besides, what the hell difference does it make to your life how I define myself? Right. So you need to get over it. So I think what I hear from my nieces and my nephews at this point in their lives is that they just don't give a damn. And if someone gives a damn, they don't care about those people anymore, regardless of whether they're straight or gay. Like my nieces and nephews are all straight. And they don't care what anyone is, you know, and I love that about this generation. They literally don't care. If you're a good person, I don't care. Yeah. I like that. And I think, you know, one thing I think lots of people would potentially be surprised about, and when I'm having private conversations with them, is that living in Alberta, Daryl and I never once had a problem being gay. And we lived in suburbia all the time we were in Alberta, and never had a problem with it, right? So I think people often think of Alberta as being so redneck and you know, off the charts that way, but I don't think it really is. I think it's quite acceptable. How do we find you? How do we find John the Fashion One?
Can I just say this one point before we do that? I think that in Alberta, you are still going to find that there are people who don't approve, but they accept. And I think there's a difference between these two things. I think there are people who still within themselves can't accept the fact that two men or two women would love each other. But they're also mature enough and responsible enough and good enough people to recognize it doesn't really affect my life, so we can still be nice to these people. Tim and I have lived in rural Alberta forever and ever, and we have the stereotypes all around us. But we've never really experienced that. Now, I know it exists. Like, I'm not naive in so much as I think that there aren't people like that. And I think, shockingly enough to me, every day I continue to be proven that there are more racist, homophobic people out there. Some of them are just still very quiet. More of them are opening their mouths, and that breaks my heart. But so you can find me, John Fashion Guy. I have a Twitter handle, John Fashion Guy, at John Fashion Guy. And also, I have a blog that I write about. I try to write often, but I haven't because I've been busy building a gym lately. And I'm going to post a new blog post about the gym. And you can find that at lifelessons102.com. Lifelessons102.com.
And do we get to see Tim in any, say, shorty shorts or while he's working out, or is that?
I don't share any of that stuff publicly. That's just for me.
There you go. John, I love you. You know I love you. And thank you so much for joining me on this show. I hope that as we move into possibly getting out of this COVID crap that we've been in, that we can talk about upcoming fashion, say spring and summer and fall, and have you kind of on as a regular guest and talking about those things. And as we head into 5 days a week on our show, that would be awesome for us to have. So thank you so much, friend. Please give big hugs to him. We love him and love you. Thanks for joining us.
Right back. Thanks.
Thanks. Talk to you later. Go eat.